The boys are back, and Season 2 is proving to be downright diabolical. With 3 fresh episodes out, we're here to walk you through what went down and shed some light on what could come. Crank those sweet Billy Joel tunes and punch that subscribe button and bell. What's up, guys? I'm Chris Carr, here to break down the first 3 episodes of Season 2 of Amazon's The Boys. Spoiler warning! Before we break down the Season 2 premiere, here's your spoiler warning. Not only will we be talking details on the episodes themselves, but we're going to talk about some of the source material of the show for context. While plenty of details from the comic are reimagined in unexpected ways for comic readers, there's always the chance that these details could reveal plot threads down the line. The premiere episode of Season 1 dives right into the violence we've come to know and love. In Season 1, we established that Compound V had been spread far and wide to terrorist cells. An ill-devised scheme of Homelander's to ensure Soup's joining forces with the United States military. We saw a radicalized Middle Eastern terrorist gain superpowers. But not to fear, Black Noir is here to murder the absolute crap out of everyone! Except the kiddies. He's a mercenary with a heart, I guess. Having Black Noir immediately rip off people's heads and split their faces by breaking their jaws right off the bat was a reminder that this isn't your typical superpowered platform. The Boys wants you to feel uncomfortable with how effortless violence comes to its most distinguished heroes. From there, we go to Translucent's funeral. Vought and the 7, well, 6. Well, 5? Well, maybe 4. Looking at you, Annie. Okay, whatever. The artists formerly known as the 7 are finally owning up to being a member down. But they use Translucent's death as another talking point for putting superheroes in the US military. The whole thing is a giant theatrical production, complete with Homelander monologuing about his dear old friend's last words to him, a spotlight fading, and Starlight singing a ballad in Translucent's honor. Annie appears to be playing ball with Vought. When we last saw her, she helped Huey and the boys. But here, at a televised funeral, she wears her more seductive costume, she holds Homelander's hand while metaphorically singing his praises and literally singing Translucence. This whole tribute is such a pointed parody of celebrity culture and celebrity response to tragedy. It's all just a marketing strategy. I love this touch of an empty glass coffin in the episode. Translucent's remaining chunky bits in there certainly wouldn't have made for a great photo op. Doing this glass coffin implies that Translucent's body is in there. And that he's nude. When we look at glass coffins in literature, they're typically filled with a slumbering damsel who's perceived to be dead. Take Snow White. In the Grimm Brothers version, Snow is perfectly preserved in glass, showing no signs of decay. She's placed to be displayed. Similarly, this empty glass coffin is being used as a display piece with the intention to deceive. Now, in stark contrast to the glitz, glamour, and corporate marketing of Annie's life, Huey is currently hiding with Mother's Milk and Frenchie in a rundown hideout of the Haitian Kings, a group Frenchie has done business with and feels like they can trust while they all lay low and Butcher remains MIA. As we know, Butcher was framed for the murder of Stillwell, and the boys and Kimiko have been lumped into the crime. Huey and Annie do continue meeting and communicating through burner phones, like idiots, but both still set on taking down Vought. They plan to expose the company's use and distribution of Compound V and tell the world that soups are manufactured, not born. Huey encourages Annie to access samples of Compound V through a guy who works in Vought's lab as a test subject, Gekko, a former teen soup star who she met while doing Capes for Christ. Gekko has a sketchy side gig these days of letting folks cut off his limbs for the right price. I mean, when you can regrow your penis, why wouldn't you let a dude chop it off for a cool $1,000? This is a paraphilia known as acrotomophilia, where one fetishizes the cutting and removal of limbs. Ugh. Gekko also serves as an example of less than stellar powers. Yes, he can regrow parts of his body, but that makes him the perfect lab rat. Not all Compound V recipients are created equal. How is Vought wrangling Homelander without Stillwell? Not awesome. He even shows Ashley, Stillwell's replacement, his violent tendencies. He bashes the ears of Blindspot, the quote, differently abled superhero, a Daredevil knockoff, when she deigns to suggest that Blindspot join the 7. Homelander also has an incredibly weird fixation on milk. I'll be interested to see if this is a sort of trigger for him throughout the series. We see him chugging milk, both Stillwell's breast milk and gallons of the cow varietal. This could play into his whole infantilization kink, or it could be a tip of the hat to the comics. See, in the comics, Mother's Milk was also exposed to Compound V, and for some reason, needed to continue nursing from his mother for way too long, and possibly was still drinking boob juice. Perhaps we're moving this trait onto Homelander. Or maybe it's just a really creepy thing they added, drinking the titty milk of the woman you had a weird sexual maternal relationship with, then laser beamed your retinas out. Whew, Fred would have a field day. As Homelander is on his I do what I want tour and very upset with the company's decision to bring Stormfront onto the 7 roster, he decides to go down to the 82nd floor to have some FaceTime with the big man himself, Mr. Edgar. Stan Edgar seems to be the only person unafraid of Homelander, calling him a man-child and acknowledging that he's well aware of Homelander leaking Compound V. Edgar then spills the tea on Vought's ties to Nazism. The company's founder was performing human testing and experimentation for the Third Reich. But when the tides changed, Vought defected to America and took his experiments and findings with him. Edgar says that Vought isn't a superhero company. It's Big Pharma. Circling back to Stormfront, this initial introduction to the character is starkly different from who we see in the graphic novel. That character was a big old racist and enthusiastic supporter of Nazism. This dude could age slowly, so even in his mid-70s, he was one of the most powerful superheroes around. The Stormfront played by Aya Cash, at this point seems to be irreverent, honest, and transparent. But just you wait. I also want to make note of Edgar mentioning Soldier Boy. He says that this particular soup was on the scene back in '44, but we know that Jensen Ackles just signed on to play this character in Season 3, so how does that work? Flashbacks? Well, in the comics, this is a legacy title, with 2 Soldier Boys having held the mantle prior to the hero we see in Herogasm. So we'll probably be seeing this 3rd-generation Soldier Boy who desperately wants to be a member of the 7. In the comics, Soldier Boy thinks that having sex with Homelander is part of the initiation process for joining his superhero team. While all this is going down, the Deep is still demoted in Sandusky, Ohio, and circling the drain. He's drinking all the time, harassing kids at water parks, and he lands in the clink. A neighboring soup based on Green Arrow and Hawkeye, Eagle the Archer, bails Deep out and tries to stage an intervention of sorts with the help of Carol, a woman from the Church of the Collective. Eagle's a really interesting character to include. In the comics, he's alluded to, but only seen on the cover of a Vought American comic. Apparently, Eagle had a different rock bottom in the comics than a Groger shootout gone bad. On the page, Eagle got coked off his tits and beat his girlfriend into a coma. Back to our boys in Kimiko. After they learn that the lovely gang they've been living with helped ship in some human cargo, specifically a soup terrorist, they investigate. The gang takes their intel to CIA Deputy Director Rayner, who begins piecing everything together. She starts to tell them that she believes that the Compound V link is an inside job and then her head blows up. What do you do when the corporate conglomerate you're gunning for blows up your CIA contact? You call Daddy. Frenchie gets in touch with Butcher, who finally shows up at the tail end of the episode. In the second episode, we see what happened to Billy after being brought to Becca's home. He sees her kid, but then wakes up in the parking lot of a Tony Cicero's in Fort Wayne. This is a great nod back to Season 1 of The Boys. If you'll recall, Frenchie was working out of a shutdown Tony Cicero's. It's where they blew up Translucent. Oh, memories. Butcher grabs a menu and crayons, scribbling down anything he can remember about where Becca was being kept. Yellow Ranch, sun 60 degrees at 9-1. Northwest breeze, large pines, juniper, no sidewalk, grass, dead end. Butcher hopes to glean some way of finding his way back to her with these clues. Later, Mallory, Butcher's former boss and mentor we met in Season 1, attends Rayner's funeral. While paying her respects, she spots an edible arrangement amidst the flowers. This is a reference to Butcher and Rayner's exchange about Billy sending her a post-screwing and screwing over edible arrangement, which she then counters with,
"I'll send an edible arrangement to your funeral."
Butcher and Mallory talk in the parking lot and strike a deal to reunite Billy with Becca, if he can bring the CIA this super terrorist that's just come on the scene. Billy and the gang follow up on a lead to a costume store where they find a member of the Shining Light Federation Army, the group that kidnapped and injected Kimiko with Compound V. She murders the crap out of that guy, then spots the super they've been tracking, and it's her brother! That's the boy she was talking about! Duh, Frenchie! Kimiko's brother Kenji was also injected with Compound V under the assumption that if it worked on her, it would work on her little brother. While Kimiko got super strength, her brother has the ability to move objects with the flick of his hands. Billy, thinking of his deal with Mallory, tries to take down Kenji, but Huey stops him from shooting. Billy reveals that Becca's alive and the accordi struck with Mallory, and Kimiko goes after her brother. Turns out, Kenji isn't super in love with America after American heroes murdered everyone he knew and torched his town, so he's fully on board with the Shining Light's mission. This prompts Kimiko to subdue him and turn in her brother. The sign language these two use with one another makes their tearful apologies for not being there for each other so moving. Saying I'm sorry while holding one hand to her heart and one hand to her brother's? That is so beautiful. Meanwhile, Homelander is continuing to make house visits to Becca and Ryan. I have got to commend the kid who plays Ryan on some incredible acting. When Homelander is like, "We're better than everyone. I love you. Don't you love me?" This kid is like, "Yeah, sure. Guy I met a few days ago. Please don't murder me and my mom." Watching Becca try to get the scientist Savat to help her, watching her try to stand her ground against Homelander, a superhero with unspeakable power who has done unspeakable things to her, is so intense. But we're still tiptoeing around having her say that she was raped by Homelander. I'm hoping we have her make that definitive statement in the next few episodes, because I am so sick of people on the internet saying that she and Homelander had consensual relations. Let's jump back to the Deep's B plot. In this episode, we learn that the Church of the Collective has some strong Scientology vibes. Carol has Deep fill out a questionnaire, much like how the Church of Scientology asks prospective members to take a personality test. Deep's answers have Ohio circled in red. His banishment to Ohio was thanks to Eric Kripke being from Toledo. The Deep answers the question, "I couldn't imagine living without," with "my talent" in all caps, adding his ability to have long conversations with my wonderful underwater colleagues, my body, my awesome strength, and my lung capacity. When it comes to the portrait he draws of himself, Carol points out that his drawing is missing something important, his gills. Now, Carol doesn't think she'll get anywhere with Deep, so Eagle decides to expedite the process by giving Deep mushrooms so he can go on a vision quest to sort his stuff out. Psychedelics have long been used for self-assessment and reflection, so sure, why not? Well, thank you, shrooms, because what unfolds is one of the weirdest scenes I've ever seen in television. The Deep's gills start talking to him, and they're voiced by Patton Oswalt. 2020, thank you for finally giving me a nugget of joy. The gills talk to the Deep, real name Kevin, about how he demeans and humiliates women because of his fear of rejection and ridicule. He thinks that his gills are disgusting, and that women will therefore find him disgusting. But after a nice, long, hallucinated chat with his little fish flaps, and a duet of "You Are So Beautiful to Me," Kevin might just accept himself. One of the best bits of commentary in this episode, though, has to be the Seven's Girls Get It Done campaign. This is the first time in the history of the Seven that there have been 3 women on the team at the same time. So the company is really laying on the girl power thick, implying that many companies will promote inclusiveness and femininity simply to push products. The press junket plays out like many real-life interviews we've seen, with the female heroes receiving insipid questions about their dating life and what it's like to be a strong woman. Apparently, this was the writers taking a shot at that moment in Endgame when all the female heroes banded together. During this campaign, we learned that A-Train is up and out of his coma and definitely remembers what went down with Starlight and her boyfriend Huey's buddies. Inconvenient since Annie is just getting that compound V she blackmailed Gekko for. However, Annie fires right back, threatening to reveal that A-Train killed his girlfriend Popclaw. The girl from Iowa is done taking everybody's shit. The final episode we got this week opens with Huey's true love, the one and only Billy Joel singing Only Human. Can I just say, I'm so happy we're seeing Huey and James Taylor and Billy Joel tease. This song talks about gaining a second wind when you feel all hope is lost. And Huey explains over voicemail that that's how he feels about Annie. She's taking him back from that ledge. She's his second wind. Oh, it's romantic, right? Don't worry, we'll get to blood and guts soon enough. Frenchie questions Kimiko's brother about why she doesn't speak, and while I commend Frenchie for trying to get buddy-buddy with her bro and asking questions about how to be a better communicator, doing this while he's your prisoner and chained to a bed might not be the best way to make him a communicative dude. Very interesting that the siblings made up their own sign language, though. And that Kimiko stopped talking after her family's death. Meanwhile, Homelander is still trying to play house, undermining how Becca is raising Ryan. Homelander staunchly believes that Ryan has superpowers. I mean, he's his son after all. So what's a dad to do when he believes it's time to push the baby bird out of the nest? Apparently, Homelander thinks you should literally shove your child out of their home. That's right. America's favorite hero pushes a kid off of a roof to see if he has the power of flight. Solid parenting, John. Becca obviously rushes out to help her kid, and when Homelander puts his hands on her, Ryan's powers do manifest. He has his father's super strength and his laser eyes. Ryan screams that he hates his father and he wants to be nothing like him. Now, I am so interested to see how Ryan's powers grow and see how he handles controlling them. Even in this moment, where he's obviously heated and is standing up to a grown, powered man, Ryan seems to hold back, mostly at the request of his mother. I like that we're basically getting a nature versus nurture experiment by being able to compare and contrast Homelander with his son, Ryan. Ryan, unlike Homelander, has a real parent. He's had love and affection. He's been raised to find peace and joy even in isolation. He's been taught to be tolerant and to learn about various cultures. He speaks Spanish, while his father says moronic things like describing the English language as speaking American. I cannot wait to see how this plays out. The Compound V schniz hits the fan in this episode, and everyone now knows that superheroes are simply genetically enhanced kids whose parents were paid to let scientists poke them with an experimental drug. Members of the Seven are mixed on this. A-Train is known about Compound V, has abused the drug. Starlight is the whistleblower. Black Noir seems downright devastated, and Maeve and her ex Elena may be able to use this as an opportunity to get Maeve away from the Seven and Homelander. In the midst of this big revelation, Mr. Edgar loops the Seven into the soup terrorist, aka Kenji, that is currently out at sea and has them intervene. The Deep, with intel from Carol, also tries to stop Billy Butcher's boat, sicking sharks and whales on the gang. This is a moment that shows just how cool an Aquaman set of skills can be. That is until Butcher decides to ram the boat straight into the whale that's blocking his path. Boat through a whale. Does Kripke have a thing against sea mammals? First a dolphin through a windshield, now this? It is spectacularly gruesome. The Seven arrive on the bloody scene and follow after the boys. After Homelander tells Deep to cover up his gills, they're disgusting. Okay, how dare you talk to Patton Oswalt that way, Homelander? In the tunnels, Huey runs into Annie, who has to blast him since Homelander is with her. Homelander urges Annie to kill Huey, threatening to kill both of them if she doesn't do it. Butcher distracts Homelander and sicks Kenji's hand blasting powers on him, trapping Homelander under a massive pile of rubble. Kenji takes off, attempting to escape, with Kimiko falling behind. The two are chased by Stormfront. Now, this was one of the most shocking revelations of the episode. Stormfront, who, by all accounts, up until now has proven to be a different cut of superhero. She can't stand Vought's PR meddling, she speaks her mind, she refuses to stick to talking points, she constantly states her opinion, and she's a feminist. But it turns out, she is just as violent and as unhinged as Homelander. She attacks the families that live in this building while hunting down Kenji. I do think, given what she says at the end of the episode, we have to know that the people she attacks are black. And when she finally gets to Kenji, she demands he look at her so she can see the light leave his eyes, and then calls him an Asian slur after snapping his neck. Girl is flat out racist! I was wondering what if the old Stormfront would factor into this younger, gender-swapped version, and there you have it, folks! Stormfront is constantly seen live streaming to her massive following. She might be young and fun, but she still is potentially spewing this sort of hate on her platform, or at least building to getting her audience more and more comfortable with her intolerance and her being outwardly racist. We've seen it in our own social media pages, people controlling a narrative to suit their own views. We know from previews that Stormfront will at some point insist that some sort of war is coming, so I imagine she'll use her newfound power and place among the Seven to incite division. Oh, and let's talk about that turn to Homelander at the end of the episode. Stormfront has a leg up right now. She's the one in front of the cameras. She's the hero. Homelander is blowing all of his fuses. He can't even get his own kid to like him. He's the most famous superhero in the world. All kids are supposed to like him. I anticipate these two are going to be going toe-to-toe, and that's going to be at the forefront of Season 2. I am left wondering about that soup Mallory was asking Butcher about, Liberty. This isn't a character I recall from the comics, so I'm interested to see what this hero's deal is and why they need investigating. I'm also loving this Church of the Collection subplot. In the comics, we have a lot of religious characters who turn out to be sinister, so further exploring that and religious organizations as corrupt institutions seems to be the agenda for the television series. Kripke has also said in interviews that we have an episode featuring Terror, Billy Butcher's loyal bulldog with a nasty habit of having sex with anything near him. That's definitely my most anticipated episode. Oh, also, is there going to be a rhyme or reason to the fly and all those buzzing noises? You may recall in Season 1, we had this fly buzzing around, which led many fans to speculate and theorize if the fly had any significance. Could it be Swatto, the Ant-Man equivalent of the Boyverse? Or is this just a fly and the sound designers really like inserting buzzes into the show? During an AMA for last season, Kripke said that the flies that kept finding their way into the show were just real photobombing flies, not purposeful CGI additions. But he did note that he's read all the wild Swatto theories, and he cryptically noted that they one day may come true. I'm still skeptical, but at the very least, the flies in the season seem like a nod to this fandom in-joke. Of course, this is just what I took away from these first 3 episodes. The question is, what did you think of them? What are you anticipating in episodes to come? Which sea creature will be gratuitously murdered next? Hit me up with your hot takes in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and click to the left to watch more comic and cartoon content. Thank you to all of our donors on Patreon, and thank you for watching. See ya, Space Cowboy.